how critical is the role of growth hormone during sleep, and why is it often referred to as the holy grail of anti-aging?
Growth hormone, that's what real beauty sleep is. So you've heard this term, sleeping beauty, beauty sleep. You get better sleep, you look better. Growth hormone actually makes that true. So during stages 3 and 4, which is arguably our deepest non-REM sleep, okay, that is where we see most of our physical restoration occur. That's where growth hormone comes in. Right? So if you pull a muscle while you're working out, or you're running and you strain your back, or whatever you do, stage 3 and 4 is where growth hormone comes in and fixes any of the problems that happen during the daytime. So we think that this is the holy grail of longevity, because the more growth hormone you have, the more young your muscles are, basically. The youth of your system is oftentimes based on how much growth hormone you have. So stage 3 and 4 is where you get the most growth hormone. Now, there's another thing that's super important about growth hormone, and that's that growth hormone is a direct indicator of your immune system as well. Growth hormone helps you develop what are called killer T cells, which are special white blood cell immunity cells that we use to fight off things like viruses and colds and things like that. So when something like COVID happened, right, sleep became a very important factor, specifically stages 3 and 4 sleep, because if we get more growth hormone, we get more killer T cells, we fend off COVID better. So sleep turned out to be one of the most important things that you could possibly do during COVID and beyond. I would argue that other than breathing and drinking water, sleep is probably the third most important thing that a human can do.
Talking about REM sleep, could you explain what happens during REM sleep and why it's considered to be a crucial stage of our sleep cycle?
Remember when I was just talking about stages 3 and 4 in deep sleep, and that's the physical restoration?
Yeah.
REM sleep is the mental restoration. So this is where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. This is where we do a whole host of things. But you know what? I just remembered another thing that I forgot to mention about stage 3, 4 sleep. Can I go backwards real quick?
Of course.
So stage 3, 4 sleep, I forgot, about 7 or 8 years ago, a Nobel Prize winning scientist discovered this really interesting thing called the glymphatic system. So the glymphatic system is kind of like the waste management system of the brain. It's kind of like a garbage truck that comes into your brain, and it takes all these bad proteins and it brings them out. Those proteins, if left in your brain, will surround your nerves and strangle them, and that's called Alzheimer's disease. So stage 3 and 4, and growth hormone and all the things that happen in there, super duper important, not just for our current health, but also for the future of our mental health. Now, in REM sleep, we know that that's where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory, creating an organizational substructure, kind of like a filing cabinet, right? So like if you get information in through your eyes or your ears or your nose, and you want to save that information because something smells really good, like chocolate chip cookies, and you want to remember to eat chocolate chip cookies, you store that during REM sleep. Now, there's a few other things that happen during REM sleep as well that I think are quite fascinating. One of them is dreaming, okay? So let's talk for just a moment about what are dreams and how do they work. So what we know is you can actually dream in any stage of sleep, but if we wake you up out of REM sleep, 85 to 90% of the time, you tell us that you're dreaming. So we know that dreaming seems to occur a lot during REM sleep. We also know that throughout the night, your dreams are like chapters in a book. So if you wake somebody up at the beginning of the night, and let's say they're dreaming about walking their dog, if you wake them up in the middle of the night, they're still walking their dog, right? So it's just chapters in a book of a kind of a continuous story oftentimes. So that's interesting fact number one. But here's what we've learned most recently is that dreams are emotional metabolism. Let me explain what I mean. During the dream state, you are working through emotions. You are accepting and processing things that happened to you during the daytime that were emotionally relevant to you. So you got into a fight with your spouse, or your child did something great at school, or what have you. those emotions must get processed in order for them to be retained or gotten rid of. Either way, you've got to process them. Here's where it gets interesting. If you can't process an emotion during a dream, you wake up and it's called a nightmare. And then the processing stops. Then you go back to sleep and you work your way up to the dream and you get scared, wake up, processing stops. And this is the repetitive nature of nightmares, okay? So understanding what's going on in your dream turns out to actually be somewhat important, but it's only important to you. As an example, you could have a dream and I could have a dream. We could both have a dream where there was a lion in the dream, but it could mean incredibly different things. So I want to be clear, it's not like there are these dream symbols out there that mean the same thing for everyone. That is complete bullshit, okay? But there is dream therapy. This is new and very interesting, but this is where, while conscious, while awake, you are describing your dream to a dream therapist, not a dream interpreter, who then helps you move through the dream and process the emotions that you by yourself are having a hard time doing. When you do this, the nightmares go away.
Really?
It's unbelievable. It's amazing. I'm learning how to do this in my practice now because it wasn't part of my original training. I have a year-long course that I'm learning, and I've got to tell you something, dude. It's cool. It's so fascinating because you're there with them almost inside of their dream and helping them, walking them through. You're actually not even being a therapist. You're not saying, well, this means this and this means that. You're just being safe, being next to them in their mind and just helping them walk through this dream.
Okay.
And here's what's so crazy. It doesn't matter which technique you do, just doing any technique lowers the intensity and lowers the frequency of the nightmares. And that's when you start to have progress. So REM sleep can be quite complicated because it can have these types of nightmares in it, or it can be quite pleasant where you can really understand things. One of the things that people used to say all the time is, you know, I got a big decision I got to make. I want to sleep on it before I do so. This actually makes really good sense because of the emotional processing and the logical processing of memory during REM sleep to allow you to make a better decision.
Stage 2 sleep, as I understand, it has very important characteristics and benefits. Could you delve into what occurs during this stage and its importance?
Stage 2, when we look at it from a hierarchy standpoint, I would argue it's probably equally as important, but we don't have a tremendous understanding of everything that goes on during stage 2. However, that's being said, there are two things that happen during stage 2 that are very, very important. One are called K complexes. The other thing are called sleep spindles. These are brain waves that happen during this particular stage that allow for other productions of other structures in your brain to continue to work. As an example, your thyroid, your thymus, all of these other brain structures during stage 2 are actually regrouping, regenerating, and forming new functions again and again. And so I would argue that stage 2 sleep is more of a combination of all the things that happen in REM and in stage 3, but more on the general level. And then when you get to stage 3, it intensifies for physicality. And then when you get to REM sleep, it intensifies for mental.
Want to learn more about sleep science? Check out Dr. Michael Breus's full interview. And if you're curious, dive into the other episodes too. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.